My name is Hannah Whitmore. I'm 36 years old. I didn't know my marriage was already ending when my husband told me I was sleeping on the couch. He didn't shout. He didn't slam a door. He said it calmly, like he was assigning seating on an airplane. "You can sleep on this couch until you apologize," Daniel said, folding his arms, "and until you buy me that bag." I remember blinking at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. Let me back up. Daniel and I had been married for 6 years, together for 9, long enough to fall into routines, long enough to mistake endurance for intimacy. Things hadn't been great lately. Arguments about money, about my long hours, about him feeling unappreciated. Normal marriage problems, I told myself. Fixable ones. That Saturday, we'd gone shopping downtown. Nothing fancy, just walking, talking, pretending things were lighter than they felt. Then we passed a designer store. Daniel stopped, stared. It was a handbag, sleek, polished, aggressively expensive. The price tag faced outward like a dare. $390. I want that, he said. I smiled, trying to be supportive. It's nice. No, he corrected, turning to me. I want you to buy it, today. I laughed, honestly laughed. We'd been saving for a down payment on a bigger place. We rented. We had a plan. A budget we'd agreed on together. Babe, I said gently, that's half our monthly savings. Maybe for your birthday? The silence hit instantly. Not anger, worse. The kind of silence that punishes you for speaking. The drive home was quiet. No music, no small talk. I assumed he'd cool off. He always did. That night, he brought it up again. My friend Olivia just got the same bag, he said. Her husband bought it without hesitation. That's great for them, I replied. We're saving for a house. If you valued me, he said, eyes fixed on his phone, you'd want me to have nice things. I tried to explain. Again, the budget, the plan, the agreement he had insisted was fair. Other husbands don't act like this, he said. Other husbands might have different finances, I replied. That's when he looked at me, cold, calculated. You're sleeping on the couch until you apologize and buy me the bag. I stared at him. Excuse me. You heard me, he said. I'm embarrassed. You were cheap. If you loved me, you'd fix this. Something in me went still. I wasn't cheap. I made good money. Ran my own electrical contracting business, pulling in about $78,000 a year. Daniel worked part-time at a boutique. $22,000 on a good year. We split bills proportionally. I paid more. His idea. Fair, he'd said. But $3,200 on a handbag? I looked at him. Really looked. And instead of arguing, I nodded. Okay, I said, no problem. His eyes widened slightly. He'd expected resistance. Tears. Bargaining. Instead, I grabbed a pillow, a blanket, and laid down on the couch. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, he barely spoke to me. When I came home from work, he was getting ready. Dressed up, cologne heavy. Where are you going? I asked. Out, he said casually. If my wife doesn't appreciate me, I'll find appreciation elsewhere. That should have been my red flag. But I was tired. Okay, I said, have fun. He left around 8. At 9, I made a phone call. By 10, the movers were on the way. And that's when everything changed. At 9:07 p.m., I stood in the middle of our living room with my phone pressed to my ear, staring at the couch I'd been banished to like it was a courtroom exhibit. My husband's words kept replaying in a loop. Couch until you apologize, until you buy me the bag. Not a conversation, not a compromise. A sentence meant to train me, to shrink me. On the other end of the line, my friend Mason was quiet for a second. Mason ran a moving company. We'd known each other since high school. Back when I was the girl who carried a toolbox in the trunk, and he was the guy who always had a truck and a plan. Hannah, he finally said, tell me this is a joke. It's not. He exhaled a laugh that didn't sound amused. It sounded like disbelief. You want to move tonight? Yes. Like right now tonight? I looked toward the hallway. Daniel's shoes were gone from the entryway. His favorite jacket wasn't on the hook. The house felt too clean, like it had already started erasing him. Yes, I repeated, calm enough that it scared even me. Before morning. Mason didn't ask the kind of questions people ask when they're trying to talk you out of something. He asked the questions that meant he was already in. Storage unit or your mom's? My mom's first, storage after. Okay, he said. Give me 30 minutes. I'll bring a truck. I'll bring 2 guys. And I'm bringing gloves because this feels like a night where someone's going to get dramatic. I won't, I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I meant Daniel or me. I hung up and sat on the couch for a moment, staring at the dim light from the kitchen. The clock over the stove ticked like it was counting down to something. I didn't cry, not then. My body didn't seem interested in emotions yet. It was running on something colder, cleaner. Clarity. Here's the thing. Nobody tells you about breaking points. They're rarely loud. They're quiet. They arrive like a final page turning. And suddenly you realize you've been living in a story that stopped being yours. I got up and walked through the house, not as someone who lived there, but as someone preparing a departure. The lease was in my name. I'd signed it before Daniel and I married. Back when we were still figuring things out. Back when he used to look at me like my ambition was something sexy, not something he could exploit. He moved in after we got married, but the paperwork never changed. Most of the furniture was mine too. The couch, the bed, the TV, the kitchen table, the dresser, the patio set, the washer and dryer I'd bought with my first big contract payout. There were things Daniel had brought, his clothes, his skincare products lined up like little soldiers in the bathroom, a couple gaming consoles, some kitchen tools he insisted were his, and a few decorative pieces that looked expensive but always felt temporary, like props. I wasn't taking his clothes. I wasn't taking his car. I wasn't trying to destroy him. I just wanted out. And I wanted him to feel what it was like to demand comfort from someone, and then realize comfort has a price. At 9:45 p.m., I got a text. Daniel, out late, staying at Olivia's. Don't wait up. My thumb hovered over the screen. Olivia, the friend with the expensive bag. Of course. I stared at that message until it felt like I was looking at proof of something I'd been ignoring for years. This pattern where Daniel threatened, then disappeared, then returned expecting me to patch the hole he'd left. I replied with the most neutral sentence I could type. Me, no problem. Then I set my phone face down like it was radioactive. By 10:03 p.m., Mason's truck pulled up. Then another. Headlights washed across the front of the house like an interrogation lamp. I opened the door, and Mason walked in first, scanning the room in a way that told me he already understood more than I'd said. Behind him were two men from his crew, Trent and Leo, both wearing work boots, both looking like they'd shown up expecting a regular job and stepped into the beginning of a divorce documentary. Mason kept his voice low. You sure? I looked him in the eye. I've never been more sure of anything. He nodded once, then clapped his hands. All right, let's do this clean. And then the house became a machine. They moved efficiently, like they'd done it 1,000 times, because they had. But this was different. Every item they lifted felt like a memory being ripped out by the roots. The TV came off the wall. The couch was hauled toward the door. Trent grunted as they angled it through the hallway. Damn, he muttered. This is the couch he banished you to? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because seeing it lifted, seeing the thing Daniel thought he controlled me with being carried away, made my throat tighten for the first time that night. Mason noticed. He didn't say anything. He just squeezed my shoulder once, like a silent promise that I didn't have to speak to be understood. We took the bed frame, the mattress, the dresser, the kitchen table, the chairs Daniel used to sit in while telling me what I owed him emotionally because I worked too much. I watched as Leo unhooked the last chair, and for a second I remembered an argument from 3 months ago. Daniel had slammed his hand on that table and said, "You act like you're the only one who contributes." And I'd thought, maybe I am. But I'd said nothing. Because silence was easier than conflict. Tonight, silence was doing something else. It was ending the argument permanently. At 12:40 a.m., the house looked hollow. Not messy, not trashed. Just emptied. Like it had been drained of meaning. Daniel's things remained, exactly where he'd left them. His clothes in the closet, his face wash and cologne, his shoes by the door. And right there in the living room, dead center like a cruel punchline, an old air mattress from the garage. I dragged it out myself and laid it down, smoothing it flat. Not because I was kind, because I wanted the message to be unmistakable. Mason raised an eyebrow. That's cold. It's accurate, I said. At 1:15 a.m., I wrote a note. My handwriting was steady, which shocked me. I set it on the kitchen counter beside the keys. The note read, "Since I'm sleeping on the couch anyway, I figured I'd take it with me. Lease is up in 30 days. Good luck with the bag." I stared at it for a moment, waiting for guilt, waiting for regret, waiting for the part of me that always tried to make things softer. But all I felt was relief, like I'd been holding my breath for years and had finally exhaled. We loaded my tools into my truck, the things Daniel never respected, even though they were the reason we had this life in the first place. The tool belts, the power drills, the conduit cutters, the things that built my income, my stability, my leverage. At 1:33 a.m., we pulled away from the house. I watched it shrink in the rearview mirror, porch light glowing like it had no idea it was about to witness a collapse. We drove to Mason's storage unit first, unloaded everything into a clean, secure space. Then I drove to my mother's house. She lived 20 minutes away in a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights worked and nobody had ever screamed about handbags. I parked in her driveway and sat there for a second, hands gripping the steering wheel. My chest finally shook. Not sobbing, just something cracking open. My mom opened the door before I even knocked. She must have seen my headlights. She stood there in her robe, hair messy, eyes immediately alert. "Hannah?" I tried to smile. "Hey, Mom." Her gaze slid past me, to the empty truck bed, to the way my shoulders were held too stiff. She didn't ask why. She just stepped aside. "Come in." I carried one bag into the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed like I didn't know how to exist without adrenaline. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Daniel. "Daniel, you still mad? Don't be dramatic. We'll talk tomorrow." I stared at the message until my vision blurred. He thought I was pouting. He thought I was being dramatic. He had no idea the house was empty. No idea the couch was gone. No idea the life he'd been using as leverage was already leaving his hands. And maybe the most frightening part, he didn't even know me well enough to suspect it. I set the phone down and looked around my mother's guest room. Plain walls, clean sheets, a soft lamp. It felt safe in the way your childhood bedroom feels safe, because it holds a version of you that existed before heartbreak, before compromise became self-erasure. I lay back, staring at the ceiling. And in the quiet, the question finally surfaced. Is this the smartest thing I've ever done? Or the dumbest? Outside, the night stayed still. But somewhere across town, Daniel was still drinking, still laughing, still believing he had the power to punish me into obedience. He didn't know that by the time he walked through our front door, there wouldn't be anything left to control. 5 days later, at exactly 6:02 a.m., my phone exploded. Not a text, not a missed call. A full-blown assault of sound. I was half asleep in my mom's guest room when the vibration rattled across the nightstand like something possessed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. I answered on instinct. The scream hit before I could even say hello. "Where is everything?" It took my brain a full 3 seconds to catch up. "Hannah!" the voice shrieked. "What did you do?" "Daniel." Pure panic, no smugness, no control, just raw, feral outrage. I pulled the phone away from my ear and waited for the noise to die down. "Did you rob the house?" he yelled. "Did someone break in? Where's the furniture? Where's the TV? Where is the bed?" I sat up slowly, pressing my back against the headboard. "It's my furniture," I said evenly. "I took it." A stunned silence. Then, disbelief curdling into rage. "You can't do that," he snapped. "That's theft." "It's not," I replied. "I bought it before we were married. The lease is in my name. I moved out." Another pause. "You moved out?" he repeated, like the words didn't make sense together. "Yes. You moved out because I asked you to sleep on the couch for one night?" I almost laughed. "You said until I apologized and bought you a $3,200 bag. I'm doing neither, so I removed myself from the situation." "You're insane," he said. "This is insane." "Maybe," I agreed, "but it's legal." "You need to come back here right now," he demanded. "Bring everything back. I can't live like this." I pictured the air mattress in the center of the living room, the only thing left that resembled a place to sleep. "You have your furniture," I said. "Your clothes, your car, the air mattress." "I'm your husband," he snapped. "You can't just abandon me." "I didn't abandon you," I said calmly. "I left a situation where I was being punished like a child." "You're abusive," he shot back instantly. "Leaving me with nothing is financial abuse." That one stung, because it was calculated. I'd seen Daniel twist language before, use therapy speak like a weapon. But hearing him aim it at me, hearing him rewrite the story in real time, sent a cold wave down my spine. "I'm not engaging in this," I said. "The lease is up in 25 days anyway. You'll need to figure out your next move." He hung up, then immediately called back. I didn't answer. The text started pouring in. Paragraphs, insults, threats. Accusations that I'd ruined his life, that I was unstable, that he was calling the police, that he was going to make this hurt. I screenshotted everything. Then I sent it to Mason, who, it turned out, had a paralegal girlfriend. Her response came back 10 minutes later. "Keep documenting. Don't reply emotionally. He's spiraling." By noon, the calls escalated. Daniel's mother. I answered that one. "How could you do this to my son?" she demanded without preamble. "He's devastated. He has nothing." "He has his job," I said. "His car, his clothes. He has nowhere to sleep." "He told me to sleep on the couch," I replied. "So I took it." She gasped like I'd slapped her. "This is abandonment," she snapped. "He can sue you." "For what?" I asked. "Leaving my own apartment? Taking my own property?" "You've ruined his life," she said. "No," I replied quietly. I stopped financing his entitlement. She called me cruel. I hung up. Blocked her. By the end of that day, Daniel's version of events had gone fully nuclear. I started getting messages from people I barely knew. Are you okay? Daniel says you had some kind of breakdown. Did you really empty the house and disappear? His best friend texted me outright. You know he's telling everyone you lost your mind, right? That you trashed the place and left him homeless. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. 2 days later, the police showed up at my mother's house. 2 officers, calm, professional. We received a report of stolen property, one of them said. I nodded. Come in. I laid everything out. The lease, receipts dated years before the marriage, photos of the apartment from before Daniel moved in, text messages where he told me to sleep on the couch. The officers exchanged a look. This is a civil matter, one said. Not theft. They left. Case closed. But Daniel wasn't done. A week later, 3 of my clients called me. Concerned. One of them, an older woman I'd done work for twice, hesitated before speaking. Hannah, she said gently, Daniel called. He said you're not well, that you're having a mental breakdown and might not be reliable. My stomach dropped, I explained. Carefully, briefly. 2 clients stayed. One canceled a $6,000 job. That one hurt. That night, I sat on my mom's bed, staring at the wall, the weight of it finally hitting me. Leaving quietly doesn't mean they'll let you go quietly. Some people don't want resolution. They want punishment. The divorce papers arrived the next morning. Daniel was asking for half the value of the furniture, alimony, half my retirement, his legal fees paid, and accusing me of illegal eviction. I stared at the packet, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with exhaustion. This was going to get ugly. I called a divorce attorney. The consultation cost $300. She flipped through everything, nodding. His claims are weak, she said, but this won't be cheap, and it won't be fast. I walked out knowing one thing for sure. The bag had never been the problem. The bag was just the excuse. The real issue was that the moment I stopped complying, Daniel declared war, and now I was going to have to decide how much peace was worth paying for. 3 weeks later, my lawyer leaned back in her chair and said the words no one wants to hear. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. She wasn't wrong. After the divorce papers were filed, Daniel went fully scorched earth. Not online, not with dramatic posts or vague quotes like I half expected. He went after my livelihood. I found out when a longtime client called me directly. Hannah, he said, hesitant, Daniel reached out, said you were unstable, that maybe I should reconsider using you. That was the moment my hands started shaking. I ran my own electrical contracting business. Referrals were everything. Reputation was everything. And Daniel knew that. He knew exactly where to cut. I changed my phone plan that same day, removed him from it, locked everything down, but the damage had already been done. He'd gone through my call logs, pulled numbers, and planted doubt wherever he could. 3 clients called to check on me. 2 stayed. 1 canceled a $6,000 job without hesitation. That loss sat heavy in my chest, not just because of the money, but because it proved something I didn't want to admit yet. Daniel wasn't hurt. He was retaliating. His mother started showing up at my mom's house. The first time, my mom answered politely. The second time, she warned her. The third time, we called the police. The officer's voice was calm but firm. Ma'am, continued contact like this can be considered harassment. That finally stopped the visits. Daniel also filed a police report claiming I stole his property. 2 officers came back. Same routine, same evidence, same outcome. Civil matter, no theft. Case closed. Again. The legal bills, however, kept opening. The consultation turned into a retainer. $350. My lawyer reviewed everything and nodded slowly. Furniture is yours. Lease was yours. Illegal eviction claim won't stick. But... She paused, choosing her words carefully. We live in a state with some odd marital property laws. Even property owned before marriage could, in theory, be argued for shared value over time. Alimony was also on the table. 6 years of marriage. Income disparity. I could fight, or I could end it. The lease expired 15 days later. The landlord called me. What happened here? He asked, walking through the empty rental. There's an air mattress in the middle of the living room. I moved out, I said. Divorce. He sighed. I'm keeping the security deposit. That's fair. He asked where to send the notice. I gave him Daniel's mother's address. Not my problem anymore. My lawyer advised a settlement. We offered $8,000. Daniel keeps the car I helped pay off. No alimony, no further claims. His lawyer rejected it, countered with $25,000, 2 years of alimony at $800 a month, and legal fees. My lawyer smiled thinly. We'll see him in court. 2 days later, Daniel called me from a new number. I answered, tired of the games. I can't afford a lawyer, he said, his voice suddenly small. I can't afford anything. Do you know what you've done to me? I know what you did to yourself, I replied. Silence. I'll take the 8, he said quietly. That offer is off the table, I said. What? New offer, I continued. $5,000. You keep the car. I keep my retirement. Done. That's not fair. Life's not fair, I said. Take it or we go to court. You'll spend more than that just trying. He hung up. 2 hours later, his lawyer called mine. They accepted. The divorce finalized 60 days later. Total cost to me, $5,000 settlement, $4,800 in legal fees, $2,100, lost security deposit, $6,000 lost job, roughly $18,000. Expensive, but finite. Daniel moved in with his mother. I know because she texted me one last time to say I destroyed her son's life and would never find anyone as good as him. I blocked her. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was quiet. Mine. Work stabilized. Picked up 2 new clients. Slowly rebuilt the trust Daniel tried to burn down. People asked if I regretted it. If moving out in the middle of the night over a handbag ultimatum was extreme. Maybe it was. But it was never about the bag. It was about disrespect dressed up as entitlement. About being punished in my own home. About someone who thought love meant leverage. Daniel never got the bag. I never bought it. And I don't miss him enough to regret that decision. Not even a little. I sleep in my own bed now. In my own place. With my own peace. That's worth more than any handbag ever could be.